Hello folks, welcome to the channel. My name is Carlos and today we're going to be talking about YEMA and more specifically this Wristmaster Traveler. So this is YEMA's Wristmaster Traveler. This is a watch that caught my eye because it is a watch that not only is it very nicely priced, but it also has some really cool vintage features that have become very popular at the moment. Some of those features are that classic vintage integrated bracelet, as well as that industrial looking Genta reminiscent design that is so popular of that time. One of the things that I really love about this watch is that it's a watch that actually very nicely fits in the price bracket between the Tissot PRX and Christoper Ward the 12. And it's a watch that when talking about this type of watches, we don't really talk about the YEMA Wristmaster Traveler, so that's what we're going to be doing today. So for those who don't know, YEMA is a very interesting independent watchmaking company out of France. This company has over 80 years of experience making watches, and it has a very interesting history where several very prolific people and brands have partaken in the management of the brand. Examples of this, there was a time where Richard Mille actually ran YEMA, and there was also a time where Seiko Corporation managed the day-to-day business of YEMA, and it was fully under Japanese management. With all of that said, YEMA is now fully an independent and is probably the most well-known French watchmaker of current time. All right, so before we get too deep into the review, I do want to point out that the folks over at YEMA were nice enough to let me borrow this watch so I could do this review. This watch is going to be going back to them as soon as the review is over. That means that I do not get to keep the watch. This also means that the folks over at YEMA have absolutely no say in the making of this review, and what you will be hearing will pretty much be my unfiltered opinions and impressions about wearing and experiencing this watch. All right, so with all of that said, let's get into the fit and finish. I have to say that the overall execution of this watch is very impressive. Starting with the case, we have a very nice industrial Genta kind of styled case. Case itself, especially the lugs, are very elegantly rounded. We have beautiful linear brushed finish all through the case to really give it sort of like that industrial design look. But of course, YEMA goes the extra mile and actually adds very nice and very fine bevels to all of the edges that are very nicely polished to just give a little bit more light place to the case. The watch does feature a signed crown that is very nice and really nice crown protection that is perfectly integrated into the design of the case to give us a very consistent visual language for the entirety of the case. The bezel in the watch is one of my favorite parts. I think that in this Genta design style watches, the bezel is a big part of the character of these watches, and I think that YEMA has actually done a better job on the bezel than the PRX and maybe even Christoper Ward the 12, simply because the overall bezel is thicker, is meatier, is more masculine, and it just has more character and more presence. It almost feels like a sprocket that has been integrated into the design. That bezel itself has beautiful brushing. It's also very nicely beveled. It has a little bit of a rounded feel, but then right where the bezel meets the crystal, you also see these beautiful machine details that really sort of break up the shape and give it that feel that I refer to as the sprocket. With this Wristmaster Traveler collection from YEMA, the real star of the show of the watch, as cool as the case and bracelet are, is really going to be the dial. The dial itself actually uses very interesting machine finish like what you would see in decorated movements, which is basically this perlage technique that they've used to give these metal dials just like a really beautiful three-dimensional kind of look to them. And I don't know what it is about this dial, but I love the fact that I can actually taste it with my eyes. That might sound really weird, but I think that is something that is just very unique and very cool about this particular watch. The finishing of the dial is by far the most attention-grabbing part of this watch. So YEMA was smart enough to just keep everything else elegant elegant in order to support the rest of the watch. An example of this is the very simple yet very nicely executed sword style hands, the very thin yet very visible and minimalistic second hand, the very thin and polished overlaid markers. Then we have a very nice printed train track on the outside of the markers to be able to track minutes in a little bit more detail. At the 12 o'clock, we see the printed YEMA branding, and we wrap up the entire presentation of the dial with a very nice double dome curved sapphire that gives the watch just a little bit more dimension, while at the same time keeping the legibility of the dial distortion-free and very clear. This particular watch does not feature a displaced case back, but it does have a very nice screwed down solid steel case back, which features what I could only describe as a very beautiful royal crest design, which has been engraved into the back of the case back. The bracelet is also really well done. It is a Y style bracelet, and one of the things that I really like about this particular bracelet is that the range of motion in all of the links is fully articulated. This means that the bracelet is super smooth. It is very easy to shape it around pretty much any wrist. It lays very nicely on your dresser, and it just has a really nice comfortable wearing experience that has absolutely zero hair pulling. The clasp is a butterfly style clasp. Unfortunately, it doesn't feature any half links, which means that some of you folks out there might struggle to get the perfect fit, but I personally was able to get a very nice fit on this bracelet on my 7.5-inch wrist. All right, so with all the fit and finish out of the way, let's talk about accuracy with this watch. So one of the things that's very interesting about YEMA is that unlike Christoper Ward and unlike something like the Tissot PRX, YEMA actually features in-house calibers, and I think that that's something that's very unique for this watch at this particular price range. This particular watch features their most entry-level caliber, which is the YEMA 2000. The accuracy expectations for these watches should be under 10 seconds a day, but their maximum tolerances, meaning the worst case scenario, is going to be limited to plus 25, minus 25 seconds per day. Since I don't currently have access to my time grapher, I was not able to run this watch through my usual 6-position testing. However, I did wear and monitor the accuracy of the watch over 48 hours. Unfortunately, the particular unit that YEMA sent me was running very fast, about 40 seconds plus a day. This particular watch was a review unit and not necessarily a production unit. This means that many other people have probably reviewed this exact same watch, it's traveled probably multiple places across the world, and through that process, the caliber might basically become unregulated, or more likely, it could have become magnetized. Unfortunately, I did not have access to a degauss machine, so I could try to demagnetize this watch, but being that the accuracy of this watch is so far above the listed tolerances on the website for the movement, I can only imagine that it would be relatively easy to have the watch exchanged or fixed by YEMA, or if it is that the watch has become magnetized, take it to a local watchmaker and have it demagnetized for free. All right, so now that we're done with accuracy, let's talk about pricing. So the MSRP of this particular watch is $890. The watch is available through the YEMA website, and one of the things that I would mention is that it seems to me that YEMA does have sales relatively often. They do happen to also have like a YEMA loyalty program. So look at their website, chat with their customer support, because there are ways of getting discounts through YEMA for these particular watches, which might end up making it a more interesting offer for you. With that said, I do think that the price of the YEMA Wristmaster is actually really good when compared to other offerings in the market that are similar to it. Starting with the PRX is maybe $100 or $200 cheaper, but I personally think that the fit and finish and the bracelet on the YEMA is vastly superior. I feel like the dials are actually more interesting, and while the in-house movements might not always be as reliable as the workhorse movements from ETA, I think that there is something to say for collectors that are looking to have something a little bit more rare and possibly more exclusive. On the other side of the pricing scale, you have the Christoper Ward 12, which also starts a little bit under $2,000, but you have to go all the way way to $1,200 to get the 12 on a metal bracelet. And unfortunately, it's a little bit harder to get discounts when dealing with Christoper Ward. So that means that for $100 to $200 less than the Christoper Ward 12, you can get the YEMA Wristmaster Traveler and actually get a metal bracelet. All right, so with all of that said, let's get into likes and dislikes. Likes are gonna be relatively easy. For me personally, I really like this watch. I think that I like it a lot more than the Tissot PRX, and I like it more than the Christoper Ward 12. And the thing that makes me say that more than anything is the dial. The dial is manufactured so simply, but it has such a cool effect. The fact that it looks so three-dimensional and it sort of changes so much with light, it's just awesome. Every time I look at it, I feel like I am just tasting wonderful, savory orange gelatin with my eyeballs, and that's actually a good thing. And honestly, it's where most of the attention is gonna go. It's going to be the dial. Like, I mean, it just has presence. With that said, I do think that the execution and style of the case itself might also be a little bit stronger for me over the PRX and the Christoper Ward 12, and it's gonna boil down to two things. The roundness of the lugs, I think, make this watch really classy. It kind of makes it a little bit more Patek-like. Last is the bezel. I mean, the fact that this bezel is so chunky, it actually works really well for the watch, and I feel like it just makes it feel more solid, more masculine, and overall just like more put together. So let's get into these likes. So I only kind of see two missed opportunities with this watch. The first one being there not being any kind of half links. The absence of half links does mean that some folks are gonna struggle getting the perfect sizing and getting the watch just to fit the way that they like. However, I do think that it's kind of challenging to do half links for this particular style of links, and I'm not exactly sure how creating half links that fit this particular Y format would actually look good. I don't know. That's one that I'm kind of in between about. The only other missed opportunity for me is that the watch altogether is put together really well. Everything is very intentional, but there's just one detail that I wish was just a little bit more refined, and that is the printing on the dial. Under magnification, I feel like the printing on the dial, and especially because the dial itself is so textured, it just looks a little crude. And I would say the same thing for the logo. I think that if they were to maybe laser edge the detail of the dial off around the logo so that they could print on a flat surface, I think that that printing would actually look a lot nicer. But of course, I think that with this particular type of watch that is so elegant and so vintage and is so industrial, having an overlaid logo would be a little bit nicer. But that's pretty much it for me. Those are my likes and dislikes. Tell me, what do you guys think about the YEMA Wristmaster Traveler? What do you guys think about these dials? How do you guys compare it to something like the Christoper Ward 12 and the Tissot PRX? Is this something that was on your radar as far as adding it to your collection? Please leave me a comment. Let me know what you're thinking. Thank you very much for staying all the way to the end of the video. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe, and hopefully I'll be lucky enough to see you on the next video. Thanks for watching. See ya.